Hello, good afternoon. I'm Niels Thygesen, Professor of Economics, Emeritus of the University of Copenhagen, speaking from the European University Institute, about long experience with European integration, which I've participated in as an economist, but also as an advisor to various official bodies, European Commission and national governments. The European Union today has 27 members, and it's a wide-ranging body ranging over a number of policy areas. When I began following it, it had only 6 members who had been founding the European Union in the Treaty of Rome in the 50s. Developments in cooperation were slow to begin with, except for trade. And it was only in the 1970s, when the international framework for Europe, particularly the Bretton Woods system of international monetary cooperation, broke down, that Europe became aware that it had to create more of a common policy framework to serve its future. And they started discussing monetary integration, but that was too difficult in the 1970s. So they picked also up another idea which has now become topical, namely the idea that there had to be a division of work between national governments and the European institutions. What in the United States is called fiscal federalism. You divide work according to efficiency and governance standards between a federal level and the national level. That was also too difficult, and we had a long period of no progress in European collaboration. Finally, at the end of the Cold War, in the end of the 80s, the fall of the Berlin Wall, monetary integration picked up again, and the so-called Maastricht Treaty of 1991 launched the idea of having a common currency in Europe in about 10 years. In fact, it went a bit faster. Only 7 years after the treaty, we did have the euro, with the original 6 members, but 5 more had joined by that time. And the euro, as the common currency was called, had additional members in the following 20 years, since 2000. But of course, with the range of countries becoming wider all the time, the challenge to effective collaboration also rose. Not all took part in the monetary integration. At the moment, 19 out of the 27 countries are in the euro, but the rest also collaborate in a number of areas of economic policy. And most recently, we've seen, as a result primarily of the pandemic crisis in 2020, that policy collaboration was extended to joint financing of a number of activities in the European countries, in particular relative to the recuperation from the pandemic. So we saw an expanded European budget and intensive collaboration on other areas. Now we have, in a sense, recovered quite well from the pandemic, until recently, when new challenges have arisen: the war in the Ukraine, the associated energy crisis, refugee crisis, posing new challenges that also call for a reassessment of the joint initiatives in Europe vis-à-vis national responsibilities. Originally, the European Union was founded on wide-ranging respect for what was called national sovereignty, that each country should do as much as possible. Only when there were very strong grounds should jobs be allocated to the European level. But that is now under reassessment, both as a result of the pandemic and as a result of the 3 crises I just mentioned. It's very fortunate that we have the euro, and we started with that, because if we had not had a single currency, European Union would really have fragmented at this time. Can one imagine what would have happened to currency relationships if we had not had a common currency? So the start was not wrong, but it was unfortunate that we didn't have more other areas of common collaboration, and that the, in a sense, the distrust sometimes between countries as to what countries were doing within their own borders was widely shared. So this is a very challenging time for Europe, not only because we are threatened on our external security, but also the external cohesion of the European Union is challenged very much in 2022 onwards. And some of these problems are clearly of a longer-term nature, particularly relating to the energy security and to the defense of Europe, which is totally outside the framework of economic cooperation, but which will also cause strains on the public budgets. The public budgets will become a focus of this discussion about how to divide the activity between the national and the European level, because national budgets are now very strained in the recovery from the pandemic, which is not complete, and we have debts in a number of public debts in a number of European countries that are at levels that threaten the viability of the public debt markets. So initiatives have to be taken also in this more traditional area as a response to the current crisis. So this is a new environment for the European Union, but one which also clearly calls on new inspirations for solidarity that I hope will be realized.